Welcome to Army Shakil 5858. I am Amir Budnam. Following all the news which have been reported by American, Canadian, and European channels, Asian, African channels, and news agencies, writers, AFP, AP have also reported the same news. I am thankful to all these news resources. Now the headlines. Bodies of food workers in Gaza have been shifted. Ukraine has changed its recruitment policy. Deadly earthquake in Taiwan has killed many people and damaged many buildings. Israeli parliament was attacked by hostages' families. Northeast of USA have storm, rain, snow, and central part of USA has tornadoes. Immigrants' long journey from Mexico. NATO again pledged to support Ukraine. Uganda's strong LGBTQ laws. Too many elephants in Botswana. An American was killed by an elephant in safari. China's meddling in Canada's elections. Now the news in detail.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's continuing to face global condemnation over the killing of 7 aid workers from Chef Jose Andres' World Central Kitchen, which had brought food into Gaza by ship to feed starving Palestinians. The aid workers were killed when an Israeli drone fired 3 missiles at the group's clearly marked convoy. According to the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, the drone initially struck 1 car in the convoy. Then the drone attacked again after survivors from the first attack got into the second vehicle, which kept driving. After the second strike, the injured passengers were taken to the third car in the convoy, which was then also bombed as it attempted to escape. The attack occurred over a 1.5-mile stretch on a coastal road in Gaza. On Tuesday, Israel admitted to carrying out the airstrike and vowed to investigate. At the United Nations, Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the Israeli attack.
The devastating Israeli airstrikes that killed World Central Kitchen personnel yesterday bring the number of aid workers killed in this conflict to 196, including more than 175 members of our own UN staff. This is unconscionable, but it is an inevitable result of the way the war is being conducted.
The killed aid workers included 3 British nationals, an Australian, a Polish national, an American-Canadian dual citizen, and a Palestinian. President Biden said he was, quote, outraged and heartbroken over the deaths, but at a White House press briefing, National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby refused to say if Israel had broken international law.
Is firing a missile at people delivering food and killing not a violation of international humanitarian law?
Israelis have already admitted that this was a mistake that they made. They're doing an investigation. They'll get to the bottom of this. Let's not get ahead of that. The State Department has a process in place. And to date, as you and I are speaking, they have not found any incidents where the Israelis have violated international humanitarian law.
On Tuesday, World Central Kitchen and at least 2 other groups said they would halt or pause operations in Gaza after the attack. A World Central Kitchen boat, which still held 240 tons of aid on board, left Gaza on Tuesday. Meanwhile, a group of U.S. officials at USAID have privately warned the Biden administration the spread of hunger and malnutrition in Gaza is, quote, unprecedented in modern history, and that parts of Gaza are already experiencing famine. HuffPost reports the cable states, quote, an immediate and substantial flow of food, health, nutrition, and assistance, expanded humanitarian access, and safe, unimpeded passage for humanitarian workers is paramount to addressing famine conditions in Gaza, unquote. In Israel, mass protests are continuing against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. On Tuesday night, Israeli police fired water cannons at protesters who gathered outside Netanyahu's residence in Jerusalem. Thousands also protested outside the Knesset.
For 6 months, we're fighting a war and losing it. And I think the only way we can win the war is to have elections and to give the people the opportunity to choose again and to bring the hostages home and to bring the soldiers home. And that's why I'm here.
At the United Nations, Iran has called on the Security Council to take action against Israel for bombing the Iranian consulate in Damascus on Monday. The Israeli attack killed 7 Iranian officers, including 3 generals. Zahra Ershadi is Iran's deputy UN ambassador. Primary elections were held Tuesday in Wisconsin, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New York. On the Democratic side, a sizable number of voters refused to back Joe Biden to protest his support for Israel's assault on Gaza. In Connecticut and Rhode Island, more than 10% of Democrats voted uncommitted. In Wisconsin, over 8% voted uninstructed. Meanwhile, Donald Trump won every Republican race on Tuesday, but Nikki Haley still received about 13% of the vote in Connecticut, New York, and Wisconsin, even though she suspended her campaign. The White House was forced to cancel its planned Ramadan dinner after many Muslim American leaders refused to go to protest Biden's Gaza policy. Instead of a dinner, Biden held a scaled-back meeting Tuesday with Muslim American community figures, but that too was met with protest. The Palestinian-American Dr. Thaer Mohammed, who recently volunteered in Gaza, walked out of the White House meeting after giving President Biden a letter from an 8-year-old orphaned Palestinian girl named Hadil that read, quote, I beg you, President Biden, stop them from entering Rafah. Dr. Thaer Ahmed spoke to Middle East Eye after walking out of the White House.
You cannot engage and try to get us to come out and show up in the primaries or in November, at the same time approving billions of dollars and 2,000-pound bombs that I personally saw devastate Khan Yunis and Al-Balah and all the areas in Gaza. That sort of cognitive dissonance is not something that is just our community glosses over.
Senegal's new president, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, has named Ousmane Sonko to be his prime minister, capping a remarkable 3-week period that saw the two opposition figures going from prison to ruling Senegal. Faye and Sonko were released from prison in mid-March, just days before Faye won Senegal's election to replace President Macky Sall, who'd attempted to delay the vote. On Tuesday, Faye was officially inaugurated as Senegal's new president.
Under my leadership, Senegal will be a country of hope, a country at peace, with an independent justice system and a strengthened democracy. This is my promise, based on the oath I have just taken before God and the nation, in your presence. I am aware that the results of the ballot box express a profound desire for systemic change. Through my election, the Senegalese people have committed themselves to building a fair Senegal, a prosperous Senegal, a progressing Africa.
Faye is the youngest president in Africa. A mayoral candidate in Mexico was assassinated Monday at a campaign event in the city of Celaya, in the state of Guanajuato. Berta de Gaetan was shot dead shortly after she outlined her plans to increase security in the city.
The citizens are with us and look after us. Of course, we will have security protocols, which the legal department of the party in the state is reviewing.
Gisela Gaetan was a member of the ruling Morena Party. The Associated Press reports at least 15 political candidates have been killed in Mexico since January, ahead of nationwide elections on June 2nd. Taiwan's been hit with the largest earthquake in 25 years. At least 9 people have died, over 800 are injured. The 7.4 magnitude quake toppled dozens of buildings and trapped at least 77 people. In other news from the region, President Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping spoke Tuesday for an hour and 45 minutes on the phone. It was their first call since the summit in November. Donald Trump's former lawyer, John Eastman, has been disbarred in California for his role in trying to help Trump overturn the 2020 election. A California judge wrote in her ruling, quote, "Eastman's wrongdoing constitutes exceptionally serious ethical violations warranting severe professional discipline," unquote. Eastman is a former law school dean at Chapman University School of Law. In educational news, Pitzer College in Claremont, California, has closed its study abroad program with the University of Haifa in Israel in what's being viewed as a major victory for the BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. The move comes after years of student organizing and a vote in February by Pitzer's Student Senate to suspend all institutional ties with Israeli universities. According to the National Chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine, Pitzer has become the first U.S. school to impose an institution-wide boycott of an Israel study abroad program. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now! Co-host Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country.
Tonight, the new allegations surrounding the Israeli strike that killed aid workers.
We were targeted deliberately, non-stop, until everybody was dead in this convoy.
Strong words from philanthropist and chef Jose Andres, accusing Israel of purposely killing 7 World Central Kitchen team members.
This looks like it's not a war against terrorism anymore. It seems this is a war against humanity itself.
The growing outrage as we learn about the victims, including an American citizen. CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. We begin tonight with the mounting questions and worldwide outrage after that Israeli airstrike in Gaza that killed 7 humanitarian workers from the global aid charity World Central Kitchen. New tonight, the group's founder, Chef Jose Andres, is speaking out with a scathing rebuke of Israel's, quote, indiscriminate killing of civilians, urging officials to begin the long journey to peace. Andres is also accusing the Israeli military of knowing of the aid group's movements in the region and then targeting the 3-car convoy, in his words, systematically, car by car. We're also learning more about the victims, including 33-year-old Jacob Flickinger, a dual U.S.-Canadian citizen. The American father was reportedly planning to leave Gaza at the end of the week. An Israeli military spokesperson called the killings a grave mistake and said the convoy of 3 vehicles was wrongly identified as hostile targets. We get more now from CBS's Holly Williams.
So this was not just a bad luck in the situation where, we dropped the bomb in the wrong place.
The 7 World Central Kitchen aid workers killed by Israel's military in Gaza were targeted systematically car by car, according to the group's founder, the award-winning Spanish-American chef Jose Andres. Speaking on Israeli television, he broke down.
I've been in Gaza myself. I met, and some of the people that died were my friends, and I served with them.
The bodies of the 6 foreign team members were transported out of Gaza today. World Central Kitchen has identified one of them as Jacob Flickinger, a 33-year-old dual US-Canadian citizen. Israel's military has vowed to investigate what it called a, quote, grave mistake.
It was a mistake that followed a misidentification at night during a war in a very complex conditions.
That suggests the aid workers were mistaken for militants, but World Central Kitchen says it was coordinating its movements with the Israeli military. Andres says his team tried to call the military even as they came under fire, with team members moving from the first car after it was hit to the second, which was also hit, and then the third, leaving all 7 dead. All 3 cars appear to have been targeted with precision strikes. CBS News has geolocated the wreckage to position several hundred yards apart. President Biden said yesterday he's outraged by the deaths of the aid workers, and U.S. relations with Israel appear increasingly strained. But he didn't answer this question today from CBS News' Weijia Jiang.
Accountable for the World Central Kitchen strike, Mr. President.
It's not just World Central Kitchen that suspended its operations in Gaza. Another American nonprofit, ANERA, says it's also pausing its work there. And the United Nations says it's temporarily suspended its movements at night. Nora.
So much aid not getting to the people there. Holly Williams, thank you. Well, we learned today that President Biden will speak to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tomorrow. It is their first phone call since the horrific IDF airstrike on those aid workers. CBS's Nancy Cordes joins us now from the White House. And Nancy, what can you tell us about what's going to happen in this phone call tomorrow?
Well, Nora, President Biden just said last night that Israel has not done enough to protect aid workers like the ones from World Central Kitchen. There is deep frustration here about what the White House sees as a lack of coordination by the IDF, and the president is expected to convey that frustration and anger tomorrow. Beyond that, the U.S. has been very publicly, Nora, trying to talk Netanyahu out of a full-scale invasion of the city of Rafah. Officials here have been proposing alternatives, so that is sure to come up as well.
And Nancy, the administration has used the word unacceptable, outrage to describe these airstrikes against those aid workers, but there haven't been any consequences. Why not?
Not only have there been no consequences, the U.S. is actually preparing to send more weaponry to Israel, including 2,000-pound bombs, possibly fighter jets as well. White House officials tell us there are no plans to cut off aid because Israel is still the closest U.S. ally in the region and because the security of Israel has been a top U.S. priority for decades. Now, we are seeing rising anger in Congress, particularly from the left after this latest tragedy, Nora. So could that make it harder to get Congress to approve aid to Israel in the future? Absolutely.
Nancy Cordes at the White House. Thank you. A massive search and rescue effort is underway in Taiwan following its most powerful earthquake in 25 years. The magnitude 7.4 quake hit during the morning rush hour. At least 9 people are dead with about 1,000 people injured. Dozens more are trapped by debris. CBS's Imtiaz Tayeb has the late-breaking developments.
The moment the earthquake struck was captured as a morning show was live on air, shaking heavy studio lights as panic jolted through the newsroom. Rush hour commuters were also caught off guard by the 7.4 magnitude quake. So too were passengers in this packed subway car.
It was definitely a shock when it happened.
Yoli Seb-Young is originally from California.
We were actually sleeping, and we were definitely woken up by it because the whole room was shaking. We tried to find somewhere to hide under a table.
The epicenter of the quake was near the eastern city of Hualien, where the shaking was so intense, some buildings crashed to the ground. Across Taiwan, dozens of other buildings have also been badly damaged, as some of the smallest survivors had to be carefully rescued. Elsewhere, hundreds remain trapped in badly damaged mines and on roads that have been cut off, thanks largely to landslides, which have also blocked a number of tunnels. Taiwan is no stranger to powerful earthquakes, but the public is kept informed by TV and cell phone messages, and school drills saw some children put on protective head coverings as they waited for the all clear. And while this quake isn't as devastating as the last major one before it, the destruction it's caused is clear. Imtiaz Tayeb, CBS News, London.
Tonight, more than 40 million Americans are still in the path of dangerous weather from tornadoes to flooding. The storm system that started in California on Saturday is now in the Northeast. CBS's Dave Malkoff reports from the heartland where residents are still picking up the pieces.
This is what the inside of an EF1 tornado looks like. Ethan Williams' dashcam captured the moment when high winds spun his car around and flipped over another vehicle. His 2 children were in the car.
My kids, they had their heads tucked on my center console, and I was leaned over on top of them, just covering them, and had my foot on the brake.
From Indiana to Kentucky,
we have cars flipped over. What a mess.
Where 5 tornadoes touched down in the state, killing 1 person.
But what I know and what I have seen is that every time we're hit, we will get through it, and we'll get through it together.
Further south in Georgia, a tornado just missed this church in Conyers.
Even though they laid the tree down, but God still was blessing us because he didn't let it fall on the church.
At Disney World's Epcot theme park, strong winds forced parkgoers to take cover. The storm created turbulence for travelers. At its peak, thousands of flights were delayed and hundreds canceled along the East Coast. Atlanta, Orlando, and Chicago airports with the most delays. All part of a coast-to-coast storm system that spawned at least 14 reported tornadoes in 6 states yesterday, including Tennessee.
We really about lost our life.
In the town of Sunbright, Alexis Hamby feels lucky her family is alive after a possible tornado hit their home.
Our neighbor grabbed all 4 of us and pulled us in his basement door. I mean, like a real-life superhero.
The first time these next-door neighbor families met each other was during that mid-tornado rescue. And Nora, it is raining on and off here, and it's not so great when some homes don't have a roof.
Oh my goodness, Dave Malkoff, thank you so much for being there. For where the storms are headed next, let's bring in meteorologist Alex Wilkson from our partners at the Weather Channel. Good evening, Alex.
Well, Nora, a very soggy and snowy end to the week for the Northeast and New England. We start with the rainy side. Flood watches posted from the mid-Atlantic into the state of New York. But look at the snow. Amounts as high as 2, even 3 feet for parts of New England, including New Hampshire and Maine. It's going to be a heavy, wet snow, that heart attack snow, so very difficult to clear. Overnight, the snow really begins to fall in earnest, continues during the day on Thursday. As that low strengthens, winds will be gusty. That could cause travel problems even in areas that don't see the snow. Winds along the coast could be gusting as high as 50, even 60 miles an hour. We look towards next week's total solar eclipse. Cloud cover looking likely across the south central with more clearing likely in the wake of the storm, Nora, in New England.
Alex, thank you. Here in Washington, another convicted January 6th rider was sentenced to more than 7 years in prison today for his role in the attack. This comes amid growing concern over former President Donald Trump's use of words like hostage and patriot in defense of those accused of taking part in the insurrection, including those who attacked law enforcement. CBS's Scott McFarland has more from Capitol Hill.
As Donald Trump increasingly champions January 6 defendants.
They're the J6 hostages, I call them.
And talks of issuing pardons for the attackers of the Capitol. A CBS News review of 3 years of January 6 criminal cases shows nearly 500 of the defendants are now accused of assaulting police, more than 120 of doing so with dangerous or deadly weapons. And we found those held in the January 6th wing of the Washington, D.C. jail, which has also been mentioned by Trump, include Jonathan Pollock, a Florida man who's pleaded not guilty accused of punching and dragging an officer down the steps. And it recently housed Brian Mock of Minnesota, convicted of 4 assaults against police, including this one. Trump argues the defendants are persecuted and unfairly treated hostages.
They're put in jail for extended periods of time.
You told the judge the other day it's like a dagger when you hear the term hostages for Jan 6 defendants.
And the reason being is because it's triggering.
Former Capitol Police Sergeant Aquilino Gonell says the hostage rhetoric adopted by some Trump allies disrespects police and could incite more violence. Homeland Security analysts are concerned too.
Rhetoric that encourages a misperception of what violent extremism is only going to encourage more violence and ultimately put the American people at greater risk.
There are now more than 1,300 total January 6 defendants, including a Texas man allegedly aligned with the Proud Boys, arrested today. And Nora, there are more trials to come, including one the week of the Republican National Convention and more straight through Election Day.
Scott McFarland, thank you. Tonight, the largest egg producer in the U.S. says some of its chickens have tested positive for bird flu at a Texas plant. The highly contagious virus has also been detected at the biggest poultry farm in Michigan. CBS' Omar Villafranco reports from Plano, Texas on what this could mean for food prices at the grocery store.
The bird flu outbreak forced egg producer Cal-Maine to stop production and cull nearly 2 million chickens at its plant in Palmer County, Texas. The number represents less than 4% of the company's flock and less than 1% of chickens in the U.S.
All the eggs were destroyed, the chickens are going to be destroyed, so it's completely safe.
This comes as 6 states are reporting outbreaks of avian flu among dairy cows. This week, a Texas dairy worker had pink eye after testing positive for the virus, becoming only the second known human case in the U.S. Texas Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller says there's no reason for people to be alarmed.
The good news is this is carried by migratory waterfowl. It's migratory season, but we're on the tail end of it.
Despite the outbreaks, Texas A&M agricultural economist David Anderson says prices should remain the same.
Less than 1% of the egg-laying chickens, that's not a lot of effect on kind of the broad market that folks are going to notice at the store. We have plenty of milk production. I don't expect to see much effect of this for us consumers either.
You can't get bird flu from eating thoroughly cooked poultry or eggs, according to the USDA, who also advises people wash their hands after handling raw meat and eggs.
The message to the consumer is, just go about business as usual. No spiking prices on either egg prices or dairy products. It's completely safe.
Anderson says the price of a dozen eggs is actually down about $1 compared to last year, and that egg production is up, so consumers shouldn't have to worry about their morning omelet. Nora?
Got it. You heard the rules. Wash your hands. Omar Villafranca, thank you. The FAA is investigating a close call between a Southwest plane and a control tower at a major airport. That's next. The FAA is investigating a terrifying incident at New York's LaGuardia Airport where a Southwest Airlines jet with more than 150 people on board may have flown dangerously close to a control tower.
Go around. I'm heading, climb maintain 2000. Climb maintain 2000.
The flight was trying to land in bad weather last month and came possibly as close as 67 feet from hitting the top of the control tower. In a statement to CBS News, Southwest says the crew was dealing with turbulence and low visibility on approach to the runway. LSU basketball star Angel Reese said today that she is entering the WNBA draft, and she did it in style through a photo shoot with Vogue. Reese says she was inspired by Serena Williams, who announced her retirement in Vogue in September of 2022. The 21-year-old is expected to be one of the top players in the WNBA draft later this month, along with Caitlin Clark of Iowa, who's moving on to the Final Four of the NCAA tournament this Friday. There were big ratings for that game. All right, Monday's total eclipse is expected to rake in the big business for cities and towns along its path. I'll report on the eclipse economy. That's next. The countdown is on for Monday's total eclipse of the sun. The most dramatic show is expected to be in cities and towns along the path of totality through more than a dozen states, where many business owners are looking to cash in on the celestial event. Here's CBS's Janet Shamlin.
In the scenic Texas Hill Country, Kerrville is preparing for its moment in the sun, the black sun.
How ready is Kerrville? Absolutely ready. We've been getting ready for 2 years.
Mayor Judy Eichner says a city of about 25,000 could swell to as many as 100,000, prompting a change usually reserved for hurricane evacuations.
We will have one-way traffic right up here along this bridge.
So you're changing the traffic flow of the city?
Absolutely.
Kerrville will have one of the nation's longest views of the moon obscuring the sun at 4 minutes, 25 seconds. And the clock is ticking for businesses.
I got a chicken fried chicken, gravy all over.
At Billie Jean's restaurant, owner Crystal Smith doubled many of her food orders.
And you'll go through most of this?
Yes, we'll definitely go through most of this, yes.
Calls for reservations coming in as far away as Germany. Nationwide, spending on the eclipse, like dining and travel, is expected to top $1.6 billion. This coveted tract of land has been turned into a campsite and long been sold out, some traveling extreme distances.
We've got visitors from New Zealand, Israel, Finland, Germany, Great Britain.
That travel expense a high cost for a priceless experience.
And the question now, will Mother Nature cooperate with the solar system? There is cloud cover in the forecast for a good portion of the eclipse path. But Nora, we can remain hopeful and the weather can change quickly.
What a moment. Janet Shamlin, thank you so much. And we will have live coverage of Monday's total eclipse beginning at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, right here on CBS and streaming on Paramount+. Heart of America is next with the National Teacher of the Year, who gets extra credit in kindness.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by Ashley, for the love of home.
Finally, tonight's Heart of America, meet the 2024 National Teacher of the Year, Missy Testerman. Testerman has been molding young minds for more than 30 years as an elementary teacher at Rogersville City Schools in East Tennessee. She currently teaches English as a second language for kindergarten through 8th grade. The news was announced on CBS Mornings, where Testerman spoke about what this prestigious award means to her.
There are 3.5 million teachers in this country, so to be named as the teacher who gets to advocate for our teachers and our students is just an incredible honor.
First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, who has spent decades as an educator, surprised Testerman in person. And then she announced the first ever Teachers of the Year state dinner at the White House. That's on May 1st. Missy Testerman and all of our teachers, tonight's Heart of America. And that is tonight's CBS Evening News. I'm Nora O'Donnell. Good night.
The plutocrats have told her. Joining me now, Kellyanne Conway, former White House counselor, and to President Trump. Kellyanne, well, should Democrats take the doctor's orders and just rest easy?
Well, like her, most of them are in denial, Laura. They look at these polls, they pretend like they don't see. We look at the southern border, they pretend we don't see it. All the issues, Joe Biden is underwater. He's disapproved more than he's approved on all the major issues in those same polling. The Fox News polls, the Wall Street Journal polls. The horse race is one thing. It's impressive for Trump at this early stage. But it's the handling of the issues, and it's the more negative than positive towards Joe Biden personally and presidentially that is really the problem that he has. I'm not even sure Dr. Jill's an asset anymore. Most people look at her as like a nurse, not a doctor, to her husband at this point. And she's more of an enabler, I think. And when she denies what CBS News is telling her, listen, he's not doing well she denies the polls. And I think that there's something else going on here. I just think that his wife and his vice president, the two women in Joe Biden's life, front and center, are not really assets for him going into the fall. If Joe Biden were an asset, she would keep her own campaign schedule. And when she starts to do even more of that, it's only going to remind everybody that her husband lacks the agility, the ability, and the acuity to campaign for himself.
Now, we're still in the Easter octave, Kellyanne, so we think the media has really zeroed in on Trump and his nationalist followers of the Christian bent. Watch this.
I am God, is what Trump is saying to his followers. Why are they believing it?
These Christians have been co-opted by nationalism, by white nationalism.
We saw with January 6th is a not insignificant number of Christians who were whipped into a violent frenzy.
Jesus suffered an identity theft on January 6th.
It is a cult. Wake up!
Wake up, Kellyanne.
You know, Laura, they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. They were supposed to get Trump. They insulted him. Then they investigated him. Then they impeached him. Then they indicted him. Now he's on trial, and yet here he is, leading Joe Biden in the polls. And I think the Democrats will regret not getting rid of Biden and Harris a year ago and put someone else in there, maybe lose to Donald Trump in 2024, make him the face of the opposition. But this whole attack on Christianity and religion overall, it's not just on television. It's in the halls of Congress. You have so many Democrats who seem hostile to religion now. I think it's partly why they're losing voters of color, because if you go into any Catholic church, you and I are both Catholic, in any suburb in this country on a Sunday, it's multi-generations of Hispanics and Asian Americans filling up those pews in some of those masses. And you have Democrats always offering us their thoughts, never their prayers. Big social science surveys, people are losing their faith, they feel lonely, they feel isolated. We should be talking more about faith, not less.
Right, encouraging people to look to the Almighty. Kellyanne, great to see you as always.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here.
Carrie Kupecker-Bond, Fox News legal editor and former counselor to Attorney General Bill Barr under President Trump. Carrie, first of all, we call them migrants, and I have no confusion around the word and know the difference between that and an illegal immigrant, because we don't know if they're here legally or illegally. We do know they're from Venezuela, and that they've been in that house for over a year. So we're still piecing parts of this together. You want to talk about this today. How do people deal with this?
The New York legal system is such a mess, and in this particular situation, I blame the judge. Harris, did you know that this judge who let these migrants off without bail did the same thing for two migrants who beat up that cop on a New York City subway platform in November? It appears to be the same judge.
I know it was the same judge.
It appears to be the same judge according to our research. So that's problem number one. And then problem number two, of course, you have the squatter laws in New York City. You know, the fact that these guys have been living in this basement for as long as they have, that owner of that building wouldn't even legally be allowed to lock the door. He would be charged with a crime if he locked the door to not let them back in after 30 days, which is just, it's crazy. And, you know, I think part of the problem, in addition just to these bail reform laws, that there was a piece of legislation that was passed in 2019 that eased restrictions on bail. That's where this really started. But then what exacerbated it was COVID. If you remember, during COVID, there was a lot of concern about inmates being housed in jails and the spread of the disease. So they eased up on these restrictions even more. And I think we're continuing to see the effects of that play out even right now.
I mean, COVID was a snapshot in time now.
Oh, I know.
And I'm hoping we learn some lessons. Not the least of which is you don't soften your crime laws behind a pandemic when everybody hits the streets again, particularly the criminals. That's a lot that you just told us. Thank you for sharing your research on this, Judge. Let's get to this. Major free speech concerns over Scotland's new hate crime law. It makes it a crime to say something insulting about someone's age, disability, religion, sexual orientation, or transgender identity. So if you misidentify someone, that's a hate crime in Scotland. That comes with a maximum sentence of 7 years in prison. What if you can't tell the difference? What if it's an accident? Harry Potter, author J.K. Rowling, dared Scottish police to take action. She posted, if they go after any woman for simply calling a man, I'll repeat that woman's words and they can charge us both at once. Rowling added, freedom of speech and belief are at the end in Scotland if the accurate description of biological sex is deemed criminal. Jimmy Fallon called out the hypocrisy. Let's watch.
If the speech is controlled, as are the people. So for that reason, I applaud this all the way. And again, this is the tolerance crowd once again telling you that they will imprison you for disagreeing with them, which if anybody wants to Google tolerance, I promise you it doesn't involve imprisoning the people who disagree.
A new opinion piece with this headline, Scotland's idea of hate speech can't be accepted in the U.S. Is this a slippery slope, Carrie?
Oh, yes, and I would argue it's already happening in the U.S. In Colorado. Do you remember the baker, Masterpiece Cake Shop baker who won a case to the Supreme Court a few years ago? Well, the state of Colorado has continued to persecute him, specifically with respect to him refusing to bake a transgender celebration cake. This is an ongoing case that's still happening in the state of Colorado. The Colorado Supreme Court has agreed to hear it. It was a transgender activist who asked Jack Phillips to bake that cake for him, and on top of it also asked for a cake of Satan smoking marijuana. Jack Phillips was a devout Christian, said baking these cakes and using speech and expression this way would violate his conscience and his beliefs, and he has been penalized for this, and now he's back up at the court again.
Wait a minute, are they targeting him over and over again?
Yes, and this particular activist even said, and this is documented, that they submitted this request to, quote, correct the errors of his thinking. So when people are looking at what's happening in Scotland, I would say, well, take a look at what's happening in Colorado because it's not that dissimilar.
So, I always think about the danger when we make so much out of something that isn't actually what it is. So what about real hate crimes in Scotland or real hate crimes in America where people, get killed, they get brutalized, so on and so forth? How does misgendering someone, calling a man, even though he may be dressed up as a woman, how is that equal?
Right, and to your point, hate crimes were traditionally understood, at least in this country, with some of the awful things that we happened during segregation, the civil rights movement, the KKK and all that, and awful, awful things. Some of the anti-Semitic attacks that we've seen over the last year in our own country, which has shocked, I think, a lot of us, not even realizing this was happening here in the U.S. And these are obvious examples of hatred. But saying that a biological man is a biological man, and somehow the government construing that as hate, is just, it's wild. And that's the concerning aspect of these laws. And it's not just in Scotland. You see, this has been a trend that's emerged across Europe. And again, where it happens in the U.S. is in the context of these local anti-discrimination laws.
Well, I guess they'll come after journalists next, because every time we do those stories about women and girls sports and biological boys and men in them, I guess I would be thrown in prison for 7 years because I'm not going to lie by telling the truth in that story. So journalism is next. We'll watch it. A new California bill would let employees legally put their bosses on silent. The proposal says workers must have uninterrupted personal and family time outside of working hours. That means if your boss calls or sends just a text message, and when you're not on the clock, you can legally ignore them without punishment. Fines for breaking the law begin at $100. The assemblyman who introduced the bill explained it this way: smartphones blur the boundaries between work and home life. Workers should not be punished for not being available 24/7 if they're not being paid for 24 hours of work. Carrie.
So this is an interesting proposal. A similar piece of legislation passed in Australia pretty recently. It certainly makes things tricky for an employer. They would need to, at a minimum, of course, they'd have to review the way they do business. And at least with respect to Australia, there were a bunch of parameters that were set within this law, as in, like, what is the person's job, what are reasonable expectations of them answering the phone, what are their family obligations and things like that. But it certainly would make things interesting.
That's a lot of detail in someone's life. So if I prefer to have nap time during a certain afternoon hour, I wonder if that would qualify for my boss can't reach me. And by the way, work ethic. Watch out, because for those of us who will do the work 24/7, I guess we'll just keep the jobs.
In Australia, they hinged on the reasonableness aspect of the refusal. So that's what they honed in on there.
All right, Carrie, it's always great to have you in focus. Thank you. Good conversation today.
I'm Steve Doocy. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and
Here in the U.S. tonight, the dangerous and deadly storms tonight turning into a nor'easter. New York City, Philadelphia, Boston. And the American tourist and the deadly elephant attack tonight. First, those dramatic images after the deadly earthquake in Taiwan, the magnitude 7.4 quake. Several dead, more than 1,000 injured. And now the search for the missing, including 71 miners trapped below in rock quarries. Dangerous landslides blocking highways. Here in the U.S. tonight, a nor'easter slamming the East Coast. Flood watches from Philadelphia to New York. Damaging winds up through Boston. Trees down in New York City. An 81-year-old woman killed by a falling tree in her car near Philadelphia. A passenger jet making an emergency landing because of turbulence. Bob Marciano timing this out tonight. The dramatic scene in Israel, the families of hostages still being held captive in Gaza, storming Israeli parliament, and President Biden condemning Prime Minister Netanyahu for the Israeli airstrike, killing 7 aid workers, including an American citizen, in a clearly marked convoy. The American woman killed while on safari. The disturbing images tonight showing an elephant ramming a vehicle with 6 tourists and their guide inside, flipping it onto its side. Tonight, the concern here in the U.S. over bird flu. The CDC tracking an outbreak, including a confirmed rare human case of bird flu involving a worker believed to have contracted bird flu from an infected cow. Tonight, the country's largest egg supplier forced to destroy nearly 2 million birds. Raya Villarreal in Texas. Tonight, special counsel Jack Smith signaling his frustration with the Florida judge in Donald Trump's classified documents case. Smith calling a key decision by the judge, quote, fundamentally flawed. And what is the delay in this case? Pierre Thomas reporting. Tonight, after those dramatic images, the cars speeding through Dallas, Kansas City Chief star Rashee Rice apologizing. Those cars hitting several vehicles, including one with a mother and her 4-year-old inside. Tonight, JetBlue and new baggage fees depending on when you fly. Costco now selling those popular weight loss drugs, including Ozempic. And ABC News and National Geographic getting ready to cover the solar eclipse over America. Join us live on the air next Monday. And tonight, right here, the one thing you'll need for it, Made in America.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. It is great to have you with us here on a Wednesday night. We are tracking this deadly storm system moving into the Northeast. It's a nor'easter at this hour. Philadelphia to New York City to Boston. Rob is standing by to time this out. But we do begin tonight with the horrific images coming in after a powerful and deadly earthquake in Taiwan, the strongest there in nearly 25 years. Multiple people dead, more than 1,000 injured, and the urgent race tonight to find survivors, including 71 miners trapped below in rock quarries. The 7.4 magnitude quake bringing down this building near the epicenter. People jumping out of vehicles, running for their lives. A high-rise apartment building now tilting dangerously on its side. A young child rescued from the damaged building and carried away to safety. The desperate search tonight for survivors who may be buried under the debris, including those trapped in their vehicles when a landslide sent rocks and boulders crashing down onto this road below. The earthquake shaking every part of that island nation and triggering tsunami warnings in Japan. ABC's Marcus Moore, latest off tonight.
Tonight, the race to free survivors after this deadly earthquake rocked Taiwan, the strongest to hit the island in nearly 25 years. Searchers looking for more than 100 now trapped in the rubble, including at least 71 miners in 2 rock quarries. The magnitude 7.4 quake striking during the morning rush hour, rattling these terrified commuters on an elevated train car. In the coastal city of Hualien, southeast of the capital of Taipei, some buildings toppling to one side. Families escaping through windows, first responders helping them down ladders. Rescuers working to remove the debris, trying not to lose their footing in the tilted hallways. This woman who escaped saying all the things fell off and everything is damaged. At least 9 killed, more than 1,000 injured. Fire crews facing a grim task, removing a body from the site of one of the collapsed buildings. The tremors felt across Taiwan. This home surveillance video capturing the violent shaking. Bottles crashing in this restaurant. Dangerous landslides blocking highways and railways. This injured driver pulled from a truck and taken to the hospital. The quake also triggering a tsunami alert in nearby Japan, forcing children to evacuate their schools and sending hundreds to flee to higher ground. And David, we are learning that close to 50 employees are trapped at a hotel in the quake zone. They are safe. Rescuers say they've managed to make contact with them, but right now crews are working to clear the roads to be able to reach them. David.
The search for survivors across that island nation. Marcus, thank you. Back in the U.S. tonight into this nor'easter slamming the East Coast at this hour, all part of the deadly storm system. Severe storms, tornadoes, at least 2 dead because of these storms, and turbulence on a passenger jet forcing an emergency landing. At this hour, flood watches now from Philadelphia to New York City. Winds in the northeast gusting more than 60 miles per hour right up to Boston, and more than a foot of snow possible in parts of upstate New York and across New England. Near Jeffersonville, Indiana tonight, a multi-vehicle accident on Interstate 265. Homes surrounded by water. This is Allegheny County, Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh, and winds bringing down a massive tree, falling on a car on New York City's Upper West Side. One woman was killed in her car near Philadelphia when a tree came down. Rob Marciano timing this out tonight at ABC's Trevor Alt with the images from these dangerous storms coming in.
Tonight, that system that brought a tornado outbreak to the heartland now tracking up the East Coast as a powerful spring nor'easter. High winds knocking down huge trees in New York City. And in Collegeville, Pennsylvania, outside Philadelphia, an 81-year-old woman killed when a tree crushed her car.
Fire department had the jaws of life and they were trying to cut the driver out of the car.
A passenger and a flight attendant on a Southwest flight from New Orleans to Orlando injured in severe turbulence over the Gulf of Mexico. Pilots radioing to air traffic control.
Was the crew member in the cockpit or in the back? The flight attendant was in the back, you said? Yes.
The flight then diverting to Tampa, and outside Atlanta, an EF2 tornado with 115-mile-an-hour winds tearing through Conyers, Georgia early this morning. This home nearly split in half. Overnight, a rain-wrapped tornado causing chaos on Interstate 265 outside Louisville, flipping this tractor-trailer. And not far from there, we found Perry Snowden cleaning up after those 100-mile-an-hour winds. So this is part of the neighbor's roof inside your parents' house?
Right, yeah, it's the top of the roof. Blew in and took out the dining room and took out the upstairs room.
Kentucky's governor confirming at least 1 death in the state.
And David, this weather's causing some serious problems for travel. More than 6,000 flight delays today, and a lot of planes are experiencing severe turbulence, including our flight back from Kentucky, David.
Recovering those storms there as well. Never fun to fly through these storm systems. Trevor, thank you. Let's get right to senior meteorologist Rob Marciano timing it all out in these nighttime hours ahead. Hey, Rob.
Hi, David. This thing's a two-headed beast now. Look at the radar. The parent low still spinning over Chicago. Now the coastal low over Del Mar. That's the nor'easter. That's really pushing the precip up in the northeast. We've already had 4 inches of rain across Pennsylvania. Flood watches extend into New York City. Those wind warnings and that winter storm warning. Look at the wind so far. We had 60 plus in Norwalk. We'll see the winds peak overnight tonight. New York, Hartford, Boston, 260 if not over that through the overnight period. The rain turning to sleet and snow along I-90 tonight. We'll see accumulating snow inland, especially in the hills of Maine and New Hampshire. That's where you potentially will see 1 to 2 feet of snow before things begin to wind down tomorrow into Friday. But tonight, everybody that lives in the Northeast should be at least prepared for the potential of seeing the power go out. David?
These spring storms are always something. Rob Marciano back with us tonight. Rob, thank you. We turn now to the dramatic scene overseas tonight in the Israeli parliament. The families of hostages still being held by Hamas in Gaza, storming Israeli parliament, demanding help in getting their loved ones home. Tonight, President Biden saying he is, quote, outraged and heartbroken by the killing of 7 aid workers, including a U.S. citizen, in an Israeli airstrike on a clearly marked convoy bringing food into Gaza. ABC's Rick Clennett in Israel with the images of those heartbroken and desperate families.
Tonight, dramatic images of families with loved ones still held in Gaza storming Israel's parliament, heckling lawmakers below, smearing paint on the glass. The pressure facing Benjamin Netanyahu inside Israel matched by the fierce reaction from President Biden, now condemning the Israeli Prime Minister for IDF forces targeting 3 clearly marked aid vehicles delivering humanitarian supplies in Gaza. The president saying he's outraged and heartbroken that 7 members of the World Central Kitchen were killed. Just today, 6 of the 7 victims transferred out of Gaza.
I need to understand that this was not by somebody that is above law and order that decided just to kill us because...
Tonight, we're learning more about the path that convoy took after leaving their warehouse. The workers say they coordinated their movements with the Israeli military. Those vehicles were clearly marked.
This war is a complex war. The incident happened in the middle of the night. It should not have happened.
David, we understand that amid heightened tensions, President Biden is expected to speak with Netanyahu tomorrow for the first time since that deadly strike on those aid workers. David?
Britt Clennett in Jerusalem for us. Britt, thank you. We turn now to the American tourist killed by an elephant while on safari in Zambia. She was with 5 other tourists and their guide. Tonight, hear the disturbing video of the elephant ramming their vehicle. Here's ABC's James Longman.
Tonight, the terrifying moment a safari turned fatal for an American tourist. An 80-year-old woman killed, another woman seriously injured when a bull elephant charged this vehicle in Zambia Saturday. The victims' identities have not been made public. Local authorities now investigating the video. You can see the elephant beginning to trail the 6 safari goers and their guide in Kafu National Park. Then it attacks, using its tusks to flip the vehicle and those inside. This latest incident just weeks after another scare in South Africa. A bull elephant lifting this safari vehicle several feet in the air twice, dropping the truck and those inside. That tour operator telling ABC News that some tourists came too close to the elephant, trying to take pictures, irritating the creature.
I was scared for the people that was inside the truck because I knew that there's nothing anyone could do right now to help them.
The animal eventually losing interest. No one was injured in that incident.
David, experts say elephant attacks like these are very rare. The safari company where that American tourist was killed says their guides are very well trained. On this occasion, he just couldn't get that vehicle out in time. David?
All right, James Longman. James, thank you. Back in this country tonight into the concern over bird flu right here in the U.S. Tonight, the CDC tracking an outbreak, including a confirmed, very rare human case involving a worker believed to have contracted bird flu from an infected cow. And tonight, the country's largest egg supplier now forced to destroy nearly 2 million birds. ABC's Maria Villarreal from Texas.
Tonight, the CDC is closely tracking bird flu across the country after a confirmed case in a Texas dairy farm worker. 11 dairy farms across 4 states have detected bird flu in cows. Officials believe the Texas man was infected after coming in contact with a cow. It's believed to be the first global case of transmission from mammal to human.
What folks should know is we've never seen a transmission of human to human of avian flu, but we're watching closely. As we've learned from COVID, viruses change, and we want to make sure we're staying ahead of it.
It comes as the country's largest supplier of eggs was forced to destroy nearly 2 million birds after the virus was detected in chickens. Cal-Maine Foods, behind major brands like Farmhouse Eggs, Eggland's Best, and Land O'Lakes, halting production at its Texas plant. The CDC says the risk to the public is low. Bird flu doesn't spread through cooked meats or eggs or pasteurized milk.
And David, this case of human bird flu coming from a cow is believed to be the first of its kind, so health officials are watching it very closely. Experts are also watching how this could potentially impact our wallets, but right now they do not believe it will have a major impact on the price of eggs. David?
Yeah, very rare, this human case, but worth watching very closely. Maria, thank you for that. We turn now to Donald Trump tonight and special counsel Jack Smith signaling his frustration with the Florida judge overseeing the classified documents case. Smith calling a key decision by the judge, quote, fundamentally flawed. Here's Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, in an extraordinary filing, special counsel Jack Smith increasingly frustrated with the Florida judge's handling of the classified documents case, urging her to move the trial forward. Smith bluntly telling Judge Eileen Cannon, who was appointed by Donald Trump, that her decision to even consider Trump's claim that he could just declare classified documents to be his personal papers was fundamentally flawed. Smith's unusually critical language came in response to Judge Cannon's suggestion that she might instruct the jury to take into account Trump's claims that the classified documents were his personal property. Smith writing that such a legal premise is wrong and would distort the trial. And he's urging Judge Cannon to explain her position as soon as possible, making it clear he's ready to appeal to a higher court. Critics of the judge wonder if she's delaying on purpose to help Donald Trump. An example of just how long some of these decisions are taking, there was a hearing 34 days ago to discuss when the trial should begin. David, Judge Cannon still has not announced a decision.
You'll continue to follow it for sure, Pierre Thomas, tonight. Pierre, thank you. One note on the economy tonight, and it involves our parent company, Disney. Disney shareholders have rejected efforts by activist investor Nelson Peltz to try to win seats on Disney's board of directors. Investors have voted to elect all company-backed board members, including CEO Bob Iger, who returned as CEO to lead the company amid a changing media landscape. The results of the vote were made public at Disney's meeting of shareholders today. Disney saying the current board, according to preliminary vote tabulations, were elected by a substantial margin. Tonight, Disney CEO Bob Iger saying, I want to thank our shareholders for their trust and confidence in our board and management. With the distracting proxy contest now behind us, we're eager to focus 100% on our most important priorities, growth for shareholders and creative excellence for our consumers. When we come back here tonight, the Kansas City Chiefs are now apologizing this evening after those cars won a Lamborghini speeding through Dallas, hitting several vehicles, including one with a mother and her 4-year-old. Also getting ready for the solar eclipse across America. Tonight, the one thing you'll need for this, made in America. Tonight, Kansas City Chiefs star Rashee Rice is apologizing after meeting with police following a high-speed crash in Dallas. Rice saying he takes full responsibility. Police say a Lamborghini was speeding with a Corvette when both lost control, hitting several vehicles, including one with a mother and 4-year-old. No word if you'll face charges. When we come back tonight, Costco is now selling those popular weight loss drugs, including Ozempic, the one step before you buy it. To the indexes tonight, JetBlue passengers could be paying more to check your bags depending on when you fly. The airline now testing dynamic pricing for baggage fees, an extra $5 to $10 for checked bags during peak travel times. Costco is now selling those popular weight loss drugs, including Ozempic. The company introducing a weight loss program through its healthcare partner Sesame. That program costs $179 for 3 months. It includes a doctor's consultation. The cost of the drug will be additional. When we come back here tonight, the eclipse across America, ABC News and Nat Geo getting ready, and the one thing you'll need for it, made in America. Funny tonight here, the eclipse across America will be live on the air Monday with National Geographic, 2 p.m. Eastern, live across more than a dozen states. And tonight, one thing you'll need, made in America. Tonight, the one thing made in America you'll need for the solar eclipse. The eclipse next Monday, a breathtaking sight from Texas all the way up to Maine. Millions of Americans along the path of totality, more than 2,000 miles long, across 15 states.
Hi, David.
Dr. Jedidiah Eisler, an astrophysicist and Nat Geo explorer, on what we'll see.
A solar eclipse is when the moon moves between the sun and the earth and its shadow is cast on us. One thing to keep in mind if you're going to watch the eclipse is that it is only safe to look at the sun during full total eclipse. So please wear your glasses, protect your eyes. Happy solar eclipse.
And tonight in Bartlett, Tennessee, just outside Memphis, American Paper Optics making those glasses. 40 new hires just for this year's eclipse.
Hey, David.
Order Jason Jarrett.
We have manufactured over 75 million glasses for the upcoming April 8th eclipse. NASA, 2.6 million glasses. 100,000 glasses for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
The workers cutting out the holes for the filters, folding the finished glasses, ready to ship.
All of our glasses are made in America.
In Los Angeles, dad and daughter duo Mark and Sophie Margolis, their company Rainbow Symphony.
Hi, David.
Eclipses are a family affair.
We love working together. It's been such a blast to learn business from my dad, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
And they're ready.
Well, David, this is the last glasses we're packaging for the 2024 Total Solar Eclipse. After making tens of millions of glasses, this has been a great day.
And in Warrensburg, Missouri tonight, Jen Winter and Daystar Filters.
Hi, David.
Daystar starting with solar filters and telescopes, now Eclipse glasses too.
It's lots more fun that we're able to help more people witness the eclipse and do it safely. When you buy something that's made in America, you can trace it back to an actual person and people who are making these for us.
1,500 orders a day, 50,000 orders for this eclipse alone. Hiring 16 new workers to help out. That's Will with the glasses right off the line, then testing them out in the sun. All of this with 3 words in mind.
Made in America!
Well, you know us. We love Made in America, and we love this solar eclipse. We'll see you next Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern, partnering with National Geographic. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow night. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Moore, America's most watched newscast.
And good evening. Tonight, a powerful and deadly storm system charging.
Tonight, the most powerful earthquake to hit Taiwan in 25 years, and now the race to rescue survivors. The dramatic images, bridges and buildings shaking and swaying, some left tilted at extreme angles by the force of the deadly 7.4 magnitude quake. A rooftop pool, rocking water spilling down the side of the building, tremors causing massive landslides. First responders pulling people out alive, but dozens of workers trapped in mines. Our team in the region tonight. Also this evening, the major April nor'easter on the move, heavy rain, floods, and up to 2 feet of snow in the northeast. After that, tornado outbreak across at least 6 states. Thousands of flights impacted. Passengers on a Southwest flight injured by severe turbulence. The bodies of 7 aid workers killed by an Israeli strike moved out of Gaza. A growing outrage. Chef Jose Andres, founder of the charity they work for, accusing Israel of systematically targeting them. Kansas City Chief star Rishi Rice breaking his silence about that high-speed car crash. What he said about talking to police. NBC News reports the Oklahoma official with white nationalist ties facing a recall election. How voters decided.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. A new day has begun in Taiwan, where the search for survivors from a massive earthquake grew more urgent overnight. There have been at least 9 deaths, and the expectation is there could be many more. Over 1,000 people were injured from the 7.4 magnitude quake, which rocked Taiwan's Pacific coast, collapsing hundreds of buildings and triggering tsunami warnings across the region. As many as 143, some of them tourists, are feared to be trapped in the ruins of toppled hotels. Searchers also feared for the safety of workers thought to be stranded at a rock quarry. The government urging the public to be wary of aftershocks that continue to rattle the area. It's the worst earthquake to strike Taiwan in 25 years. Our Janice Mackey-Freyer is in the region tonight with late details.
Tonight, rescuers racing to reach those trapped after a massive earthquake in Taiwan, pulling people out of buildings, even out of vehicles, with authorities now focusing on getting to those still stuck under the rubble. With reports tonight, 71 workers are trapped in 2 mines. The earthquake struck during the morning rush hour, causing buildings to shake and sway. This woman saying it felt like her house would collapse. The magnitude 7.4 quake jolting the island. Rooftop swimming pools churned, water pouring down this building. Video filmed inside a moving train showing huge landslides. Items toppling off store shelves. The televisions in this newsroom started to shake. The most powerful earthquake to hit Taiwan in a quarter century. More than 1,000 people are injured. Taiwan's president-elect saying the top priority is to rescue people and get them treatment. The hardest hit area around Hualien, just 11 miles from the epicenter. That's where American Annie Lima was when it hit.
Around 8 o'clock this morning, and the whole world started shaking. What was it like?
It was pretty scary. In all the years that I've lived here and in Southern California before that, I felt a lot of earthquakes, but this was by far the strongest and the most frightening. And it just went on and on. I think it was close to 2 minutes. And as soon as the shaking stopped, we ran to get out of the apartment.
Dozens of people are still trapped along roads, tunnels, and hiking trails cut off by landslides. In Hualien, some buildings now leaning precariously, and crews already working to demolish them.
Janice, we recognize they're still very early in the search and rescue here, but it appears the early warning systems in place made a difference.
Lester, they had cell phone alerts that went out. They're accustomed to having earthquakes there, and that it happened during the day when people were awake appeared to help. Tonight, the focus is on search and rescue, but the challenge, there have been more than 200 aftershocks so far, and rain is in the forecast, which could complicate efforts. Lester?
Janice Mackey-Freyer, thank you. There is volatile weather here at home tonight in the eastern part of the country with torrential rain, damaging winds, and possible flooding after this system produced more than a dozen tornadoes and caused at least 1 death. We'll get to Dylan Dreyer in a second, but let's start with Maggie Vespa.
Tonight, a lethal system races east. Up to 4 inches of rain slamming some communities.
Not happy about the weather here, but it is what it is.
Flood watches in effect for millions from West Virginia to New York. Storms wreaking havoc for travelers.
I'm delayed. An hour and a half to an hour.
Thousands of flights delayed. The monster system carving a path of destruction from the Ohio east. Semi-trucks, snapped trees, and apple power.
We were just from the basement, and that's when we heard the pop and the rain flying off. We weren't even in the basement yet before that happened.
You didn't even make it down?
No. This is crazy. It's still an early part of here to have all this tragic storm.
This afternoon touring damage, saying as many as 7 tornadoes tore through his state Tuesday, some turning deadly.
We have confirmed 1 weather-related fatality. This came in Campbell County.
19-year-old Brady Delaney, remembered by family, saying loved by so many.
We'll be praying for him and for his family.
Outside Atlanta, several people were injured in storm-ravaged neighborhoods. While in Michigan, some 14 inches of snow. A week of wild weather dragging on for tens of millions more tonight.
And Maggie, that damage behind you speaks to the power of these storms.
Yeah, Lester, exactly. Cleanup is clearly still a huge issue here, as are power outages. More than 12,000 people here in Kentucky are still without power, more than 350,000 nationwide. Lester?
Maggie Vespa, thank you. Let's bring in Dylan Dreyer now. She's in Lower Manhattan, where rainy and windy conditions are picking up tonight. Dylan?
They certainly are, Lester. The rain has been coming down hard. We've had thunder and lightning. Severe storms are still a possibility across the mid-Atlantic. This whole storm system produces a lot of rain as it moves through tonight and tomorrow, so we still have 39 million people under flood watches. Now, on the backside of this storm, as it pulls away, winds will increase. The threat of snow increases, and then more rain is going to fill in back through the mid-Atlantic. We could see wind gusts along the coast up to 65 miles per hour with an additional 2 to 3 inches of rain possible across New England. And if we get 1 to 2 feet of snow, Lester, up across New England, this could be the biggest snowstorm we've seen so far this season. And of course, it's now April.
All right, thank you, Dylan. Israel is facing growing outrage after its airstrikes in Gaza killed an American and 6 others working for World Central Kitchen. The aid group's founder, Chef Jose Andres, speaking out tonight as Israel says its forces made a grave mistake. Raf Sanchez is in Israel.
Tonight, the bodies of the foreign aid workers carried out of Gaza after those Israeli airstrikes on vehicles marked with large World Central Kitchen logos.
Some of the people that died were my friends, and I shared with them.
The founder of the aid group, Chef Jose Andres, appearing on Israeli television and demanding answers.
They were targeted systematically, car by car. So this was not just a bad luck situation where, oops, we dropped the bomb in the wrong place, or no, this was over 1.5, 1.8 kilometers with a very defined humanitarian convoy.
Overnight, Israel's top general announcing the findings of its preliminary investigation, calling the strikes a grave mistake.
It was a mistake that followed a misidentification at night during a war in a very complex conditions. It shouldn't have happened.
All 7 World Central Kitchen staff who were killed have been identified. Among them, 33-year-old Jacob Flickinger, a dual American-Canadian citizen. His family sharing these photos of him with his partner and young sons. President Biden saying he's outraged and heartbroken by the deaths and that Israel has not done enough to protect aid workers. But the White House also saying it won't stop supplying arms to Israel, which it says faces a genocidal threat from Hamas. Just last week, the Biden administration signing off on sending Israel more than 1,800 bombs and is pressing Congress to approve a plan to sell Israel more F-15 fighter jets in the future. Meanwhile, World Central Kitchen has paused its aid operations in Gaza, 3 of its ships returning to port today with vital food undelivered. Another blow to the humanitarian effort just when it's needed most.
And Raf, we've learned President Biden is expected to talk to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu tomorrow.
That's right, Lester. It'll be their first call in nearly 3 weeks and comes amid a series of very public disagreements between the U.S. and Israel, not just over the killing of those aid workers, but also over Israel's plan to push ahead with an attack on Rafah. Lester.
Raf Sanchez tonight, thank you. A new statement this evening from Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice on that car crash in Dallas that injured 4 people. Rice has been linked to one of the cars involved and says he'll continue to cooperate with authorities. He says he takes full responsibility for his part in the accident and apologized to everyone involved. There have been no charges in the case so far. A follow-up tonight to our report on a town in Oklahoma that elected a man with white nationalist ties. Then came the effort to unseat him from city council and a recall vote yesterday. Brandy Zadrozny is back in Enid, Oklahoma with the result.
On a blustering morning in Enid, Oklahoma, voters headed to the polls, there to answer a question that for months divided their city. Should Republican City Council member Judd Blevins be removed from office over his white nationalist ties?
Voting against Judd Blevins.
I voted for Judd Blevins. I believe that he's the man for the hour.
Blevins, seen here campaigning during yesterday's recall vote, has said he never identified as a white nationalist or white supremacist. But activists in Enid who initiated the recall race took issue with his participation in the deadly 2017 Charlottesville Unite the Right rally and his past role with a state chapter of a white nationalist organization. Blevins refused to talk about his past when we approached him last month.
Why did you march in Unite the Right? Why did you hold a tiki torch and marches because said Jews were not replaced there?
But offered this at a candidate forum ahead of the election.
What were you trying to achieve, or what was your purpose in
bringing attention to the same issues that got Donald Trump elected in 2016, securing America's borders, reforming our legal immigration system, and frankly pushing back on this anti-white hatred that is so common in media and entertainment.
Last night, according to preliminary votes, Blevins lost his seat by 268 votes to Republican Cheryl Patterson. One of those votes coming from Connie Vickers. For a year, Vickers and her friend Nancy Presnell had been a part of the Enid Social Justice Committee, drawing attention to Blevins, often carrying this poster showing him holding a tiki torch in Charlottesville before the rally. They gathered together last night as the election results came in.
How are you feeling? Elated, happy, relieved. Even though we're a red city, a red state, people still don't think that Nazis should be allowed to be in office, making decisions.
In a statement, Blevins called the race a trial not just for me, but for many in this community. But for many in the community, the results, a relief.
I was very proud of the city of Enid tonight.
Even with Blevins defeated, though, some see more work ahead.
The people who recruited him and supported him and paid for him are still there, and they're not going to give up.
Brandy Zadrozny, NBC News, Enid, Oklahoma.
In 60 seconds, growing concern about the spread of avian flu to people. The measure is being taken to stop it, and could it impact the price of eggs? Right after this. A health alert to tell you about tonight. The nation's largest egg producer temporarily shutting down a facility in Texas after bird flu was discovered there. Morgan Chesky now on the potential risks and the impact on consumers.
Tonight, the American agriculture industry on high alert as a series of troubling new cases of highly infectious avian flu hit poultry farms, dairy producers, and now people. The nation's largest egg supplier destroying nearly 2 million chickens after birds at one of its Texas facilities tested positive.
It's highly dangerous to humans, although it has never been shown to be easily transmissible between people.
Now, the first U.S. case of a person suspected of catching this version of bird flu from a cow has been reported in Texas. Officials say the patient, a dairy employee who worked near infected cows, wasn't hospitalized and experienced only minor symptoms. The news comes as the highly contagious bird flu has spread to dairy cattle in at least 6 states. At Cedar Ridge Egg Farm outside Dallas,
It can spread anywhere.
owner Raouf Wahid has strict safety measures in place for his 14,000 chickens, but the risk remains high. If just one of your birds gets infected with avian flu, what happens to the flock?
They will all be destroyed.
Officials say the risk to human health remains low, but stress eggs or poultry should be cooked to an internal temperature of 165 degrees to kill any bacteria or viruses. The most immediate impact, though, may be to your grocery bill. Egg prices, which have already doubled since 2020, could be inching higher if this current outbreak continues to spread. And tonight, officials warn that backyard or even pet chickens are at risk if they come into contact with wild birds carrying the virus, but do not suggest that this is all the start of a new pandemic. Lester.
Morgan Chesky, thank you. Coming up, one country's anti-gay law that even includes the death penalty, how a court has just ruled. And will the U.S. intervene? Back with our NBC News report. It's been called one of the harshest anti-gay laws in the world. And today in Uganda, a highly anticipated ruling was handed down in a court case that challenged it. Here's Aaron McLaughlin.
Tonight, Uganda's constitutional court upholding a majority of the country's notorious anti-gay law, which includes the death penalty for aggravated homosexuality, a law the Biden administration calls a tragic violation of universal human rights.
I'm worried. I'm petrified. Given if the judges can give such a ruling, that means there's no protection for any LGBTQ person in Uganda, and I'm not immune to that.
Activist Frank Mugisha, listed as a petitioner on the legal challenge that was rejected today, says they plan to appeal the ruling to Uganda's Supreme Court. He's been receiving death threats and is worried about what today's judgment means for the community.
For Ugandans, it is now state-sanctioned homophobia. It is telling Ugandans, now you can act. Now you can hate on LGBTQ persons.
So you're bracing for violence?
Definitely.
On Wednesday, the court ruled that some sections of the law do violate Uganda's constitution, including a provision that required mandatory reporting of homosexuals and another that prevented landlords from renting to the LGBTQ community. But the court deemed the rest of the anti-homosexuality law constitutional, including upholding the death penalty provision and the criminalization of homosexuality. It's a law that's overwhelmingly popular in Uganda.
We will fight for our African culture. We will fight for our faith.
The court called the law a reflection of the socio-cultural realities of the Ugandan society, even citing the U.S. Supreme Court Dobbs decision, striking down the right to abortion, pointing to how that ruling considered the U.S.'s history and traditions. In December, the U.S. government responded to the law with sanctions, including visa restrictions for certain Ugandan officials and reduced support to the Ugandan government. Tonight, the State Department reacted to the ruling.
We believe that law undermines the human rights, prosperity, and welfare of all Ugandans.
Activists are calling on the Biden administration to do more. Now in New York, Mugisha says he plans to return to Uganda soon.
The whole entire world should be worried. And they shouldn't only be worried about Uganda, they should be worried about other countries.
Aaron McLaughlin, NBC News, New York.
That's nightly news for this Wednesday. Thank you for watching. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Goodman. Have a good life.